Today we'll look at how to determine the size of intervals, which is super helpful to understand the distance between pitches in a melody. And it gets even more fun when discussing the size of intervals when looking at chords and harmony. So the intervals are the building block to most styles of music. It helps you learn music faster. It helps you sight read better. It helps you understand the relationships between notes and chords. Today I'm going to show you all the tips and tricks I've been using to teach hundreds of students about interval size, which is the numerical part of the interval. In another video, I'm going to show you the quality aspect of intervals, things like perfect, major, and minor. But today, let's just focus on interval size. We're going to make interval size super easy to understand. And at the end of the video, I'll even have a few practice intervals that we can work through together. And for hanging out with me today, I have a free music theory survival guide. Just go to joshring.com/free to get your free music theory survival guide. It has all of the intervals that we're going to be talking about and a whole lot more. I think you'll find it super helpful.
All right, so let's start with interval size. So this is the distance between notes, the distance up or down with a numerical value. So if we start with one note, so let's here just start with C for today. And if we go from that C to that same C, that's what we call a first or one, right? So that's a unison. But if we go from one note to the next note, so one letter to the next letter, that's going to be what we call a second, right? So here the C to D is a second, but it could be a C to D flat or even C to D sharp. All of those are seconds because the letter is what's important for now. We'll worry about the accidentals in the next video to worry about is it major or minor, those kinds of things. But for now, we just want to know about what the number is. So this C to E is a third because we've skipped the D. We've skipped one of the letters. Same thing, this D to F is also a third because we skipped a letter, or even this E to G is also a third because we've skipped the F, right? And we're not worried about quality of major or minor or whatever right now. We're just worried about the number aspect. So going back to the C to E, again, it doesn't matter, is it E natural? Is it E flat? Is it even like something weird like E sharp, or super weird like C sharp to E flat, right? We're just worried about it's a some type of C to some type of E. It's going to automatically be a third. And this one's especially weird because, right, that C sharp to E flat is technically a whole step, but you don't worry about the actual half step or whole step distance for now. We're worried about the letter, the C to the E is a third. So same kind of thing on down the line. The C to F is a fourth, C to G, fifth. On down the line, our sixth, our seventh, or our eighth, our octave, right? So we're just worried about the letters for today. We'll worry about, again, the accidentals in the next video. So same kind of thing. I could do the same kind of thing descending. So the C down to a B is still a second because it's one letter away. So I have in a lighter gray up top what the distance, if I went from the B up to the C, you can see as a second, or the C down to a B is a descending second. So it's like if I'm going from Chicago to New York, if I'm starting in Chicago into New York, it's the same distance if I was then going to turn around and go from New York back to Chicago. It's the same distance from point A to point B, just which one are you starting at, right? So on down the line we go, that C down to the A, there is still a third because we're skipping over the B. And on down the line we can go to our fourths, our fifths, our sixths, our sevenths, and now a descending octave. And again, you could have seen the light gray with all of those.
And so to see these, what we call inversions, the C up to the E would be that third, but then the C down to the E would be the sixth, right? And I could count down from C down to E and get six, or I could count E as being one and go up to C to get six, right? Both are six. And seen another way here, I can see the C going up to the E as a third, or the C going down to the E as a sixth, right? So again, just another way of seeing how are you going to compare these notes, which is the starting spot. And to see two other pairs of notes, I could have the C up to a G as a fifth, or a C down to the G would be my fourth. And again, am I starting at the G going up to the C as a fourth, or am I going C down to the G, both being a fourth? And again, to see it another way, right, we could see the C to the G is the fifth, or the C down to the G is the fourth. All right, so here's your first really great trick with interval sizes, is that these inversions, these pairs of notes of saying C up to D or C down to D, right, these inversions are always going to add up to 9, right? So here we have the C to D is a second, or then the D up to the C, or the C down to D, right? Both of those would be 7. So I have the 2 plus a 7, there we get our 9, right? And on down the line we go of all of these adding up to 9. Makes things a lot easier when you're thinking about some complex ones. You could break it down a little more simple numbers. The second great trick is actually a really nice shortcut if trying to determine is it an odd interval or an even interval. So here I have some odd intervals, and you can see the 3rd, 5, 7, 9, right? So all of those being odd numbers. You can see all of them are from one space to the next. So all of these starting on F, the next note they go to is on another space. Or if I did this starting on E, right? All of these, again, 3, 5, 7, and 9 are now all line to line. So if they're on the same one, of either all being spaces or all being line to line, they're going to be odd. Whereas evens, you can then imagine, right? If they are different from a line to a space or a space to a line, they're going to be an even number. So here, 2, 4, 6, 8, on down the line we go. So again, odds, they're going to be the same of space to space or line to line, and evens are going to be different from a line to a space. I think that makes it really easy, which I think is how some pianists seem to have the superpower of knowing, is this an octave or not, just by looking at it, because subconsciously we're thinking, oh, they're different notes, right? So this really low F to F, I can say, oh, that's an octave, right? Because it's different from a space up top to a line below, versus these other ones, they're both spaces, right? So they're not octaves. I know that instinctively. And before we start practicing together, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me spread the word so I can keep helping as many people as possible. All right, so let's jump into some practice together to work on these interval sizes. So here I have this nice little melody. All right, so first I'm just gonna break down where are the smallest interval sizes first, and we'll go on from smallest to largest here. So here I'm gonna start with the second, so this E to D sharp, right, would be a second, right? And you can see it goes down from the E down to D sharp, or the D sharp up to E, both would be seconds there. And later, you can see at the very end, I have this D down to C, right? So that would be another second. So some thirds I have in the first measure, the G down to an E, right? Well, that would be a third because I have a note in between. Later I have the E up to G sharp, right? But accidentals don't change the number, right? It's still going to be a third if it's E to G or E to G sharp. Still a third because we're looking at letter relationships here, not necessarily accidentals. And then at the end, you can see that B up to a D. There's your third again. All right, so some fourths that we have right out of the gate, that C down to G is a fourth, or again, the G up to a C would also be a fourth. And then in the end of the second measure, we have this E, high E down to that B, right? So the B to E would be a fourth. And then we also have this big interval, this G sharp way up to that E in the second measure, right? So that would be a sixth. Again, G sharp doesn't matter. If it was G natural, would also be a sixth as well. And just to see the inversion, right? The E up to G sharp we said earlier was a third. So again, the interval inversions will always add up to 9. So that 3 plus the 6, there's our 9s, right? So the E up to G sharp is the third, G sharp up to E, there's your sixth, again, adding up to 9. So let's practice the other. I'm going to give you the note and the interval I'm asking for, and you have to figure out what the note is. And again, we're not worried about accidentals. I just want to find what is one note to another note. So here we have a D, so count up through the alphabet. And starting with D is 1, right? So what does that get us? That gets us to a C, right? So D up to a C would be a seventh. If you wanted to practice then the inversion, so down a second, right? Again, 7 and 2 equaling 9. So the inversion would be down a second would get us to that C as well, right? So there's our D down to C. There's our second. Again, so that's another way to practice this. If going up 7 is a lot to count, you can just count down 2. That might be a little easier. And again, always starting with the note you're starting with is 1, right? So whatever note you're starting with, that is 1, and then you can count 2 from there. All right, so again, that first trick we were looking at, the 7 is an odd number, so we're expecting them to be the same from space to space, and the inversion, that's an even number, so we're expecting different. So the D to C being line to space. All right, let's do the same kind of thing, a sixth down from B. And again, just ignore the accidental. We're not really concerned with that now. We'll focus on those later. So again, start with a B, count down 6. B, remember, is going to be 1, so then 2 would be A. On down the line we go until we get to 6 would be our D, right? So there's our B flat down to D would be our sixth. Now, or you could also have done the inversion. Again, the opposite of the 6 would be the 3, right? Because it needs to add up to 9. So B flat would be 1, C would be 2, then we get to the D would be 3, right? And just to remember that trick, right? The 6 as an even number, they're going to be different from line to space. And then 3 is an odd number, they're going to be the same, right? So then B flat to D, line to line, they are the same. All right, don't forget to go download your free music theory survival guide. Just go to joshring.com/free. Again, it has all of these intervals that we've been talking about and a whole lot more. You'll find it super helpful. And then let me know in the comments what trick has been most helpful for you, what's been most eye-opening. Keep practicing your interval sizes, and I'll see you in the next video where we break down interval quality next.